I'm sorry, hold on one second. I got to take this, y'all. Hello?
Rich, I'm so glad I caught you. Are you busy?
Sylvia. Hey, Sylvia. Hey, actually, yeah, I'm just getting ready to get into the message here at 10:30.
Oh, good, because this will only take a minute. Right. Do you know that we have a middle school retreat coming up? We have 65 middle schoolers, and we need 5 more adults to go with them.
Yeah, Sylvia, I heard about that. It's going to be an awesome time. I heard it's going to be fantastic.
It is.
Yeah.
And we need you to go with us.
Wait, what? You're asking me to go on the retreat. This is Sylvia, I would love to, but I really honestly have a really packed weekend that weekend.
Oh, Rich, I took the liberty of talking to Wendy in the office.
Of course you did.
And she said your schedule is clear.
Yeah, but I got stuff at home. I got to mow my grass that weekend. I got to coach baseball. My daughter Abby's coming back from Costa Rica, 3 months mission trip. I've not seen her in 3 months.
Oh, Rich, your family can survive without you for 2 days. Honestly, I thought you loved Jesus.
She pulled the Jesus card on me. I do love Jesus, and I would honestly love to be there, but I just don't think I can fit it in that weekend.
Please.
Sylvia, okay, listen. Yeah, whatever you need, what do you need me to do?
I knew we could count on you. They're going to be swimming and hiking and kayaking.
That actually sounds fantastic. So what, I can maybe lead them down the river, teach them to rock climb?
No, Rich. We need you in the kitchen.
The kitchen.
Washing dishes.
Okay.
And we need you cleaning up their cabins when they're out having fun.
So let me get this straight, Sylvia. So you want me to give up my one weekend with my family and go on this middle school retreat, and you want me to wash their dishes and then go in their cabins, middle school boys' cabins, and clean up their dirty socks, dirty underwear, and anything else they've got laying around?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Sylvia, listen, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make that weekend available. I'll do it, whatever, just to serve the Lord. You ever get that call? You will. Did you ever get an ask like that? Hey, we need you to do this. We need you to serve in this way. You ever get that call? If you haven't, you will. And the reality is, that's hard, isn't it? Because we're busy. We're busier than we've ever been in our culture. And our families have got to come first. And so most of the time, when we get that call, hey, can you serve doing this? Can you serve doing that? The reality is, most of us are going to say no. It's the 80-20 principle. We see that in organizations. Churches are no exception. We see that all the time, where 80% or 20% of the people do 80% of the work. Friends, here's the reality. I believe that as we keep moving forward as a church, we can turn that around. I honestly believe we can become a church where 80% of the people are doing the majority of the work. I believe it starts when we get a right biblical understanding of what it means to serve. So welcome to week number 4 of our Vision Series 2018, where we are talking about taking ground, where we're talking about connecting people to Jesus Christ. We're claiming lives, where we're winning people into a saving relationship with Jesus. Our ground, the ground we're going to be taking, is every single life around us that does not know who Jesus Christ is, does not have a relationship with him. We're talking people who are in your family, people who are your friends, people who you go to school with, people on the team with you, people at work with you, or people just in our community, people in your neighborhood. We're going to claim those lives for Jesus. Isn't that what our vision statement is all about? To follow Jesus and lead others to him. I mean, come on, y'all. This is what we do. This is who we are. We've taken that vision statement and we've broken it out into 6 words that really capture the integrity and the meaning of what that looks like. These 6 words not only make, but mark the life of a follower of Jesus. Here are the 6 words. Read those with me. Worship, grow, serve, love, lead, launch. If you are not yet a follower of Jesus, I guarantee you, if you get involved in these things and we can help you do that, you will grow into a relationship with Jesus. If you're already in a relationship with Jesus, we should be able to look at your life on a consistent basis and see you doing all 6 of these things. Again, these 6 things not only make, but they are markers of a person's life who follows Jesus. This is what we're supposed to be doing. In fact, this is why we did what we did last weekend. right? We didn't meet here at 10:30. Where did we meet last weekend? Yeah, church. How many were part of Church in the Park? Raise your hand. Wasn't that a phenomenal event? If those of you who missed it, I'm sorry you missed it. We had like 350 people gathered out there to worship Jesus at Fall Festival. It's the biggest crowd they've ever had. The vendors were very thankful for the lunch business afterwards, right? But it was great. 350 people, about 375 including canines. A lot of people brought their dogs, which is really cool. But we actually reached more than that. The vendors who were setting up while we were leading worship, the vendors who were setting up all around the park, they came to us and said, we could hear that. It was great. We had a guy fishing in the pond on the other side of the park come up and tell us, I heard everything y'all did in worship. I loved it. We hit so many people's lives by going outside to where people are who weren't normally going to be in church. It was a phenomenal event. But this is what we do. And every week we're talking about our vision statement and these 6 words. We're breaking out a word a week during this series and reminding us what it means practically as we try to live into who God calls us to be. In fact, we have some really great creative people, artistic, who are making these stained glass windows. You notice that one a week with the word of the week on it. So 2 weeks ago, the word was what? Worship. Last week it was, and this week it's serve. So we're going to talk about serve. So we've been walking into these words through the life of a man named Gideon. And maybe you're a guest with us today, and we're like super glad that you are here, but we want to catch you up so we're all on the same page together. So we've been talking about this guy named Gideon, kind of following his life story. He was a real guy that lived a really long time ago. He was an Israelite, one of God's people. They're called the Israelites. And he lived among the Israelites when they were at an important and unique time in their history. They were getting beat up by another nation, the Midianites. The Midianites kept coming on their land and taking everything, and the Israelites were so scared of the Midianites that for 7 years in a row, they kept just going into hiding into caves and clefts in the rocks for 7 years. And then God called this guy Gideon and said, you are going to free my people. So Gideon gets the call, right? Gideon gets that big ask. And God said, Gideon, I'm going to use you to beat up all the Midianites. You're going to defeat them. And Gideon said something like this in response. I'm probably busy that weekend. I got to thresh wheat in the wine press over here, hiding from them because I'm scared of them. He said, God, don't you understand? I'm the weakest of the weak. I think you need another guy. But God said, Gideon, I've chosen you for this, and I will be with you. If you remember, Gideon's very, very first step into saying yes to God was worship. It was easy worship. It was like, hey, go get a goat, slaughter it, put it on the rock, watch God consume it. It was amazing, but it was simple. It was easy worship. That's what he knew how to do already. He could do it with his eyes closed. But it was a start. And what God began to do then was to grow Gideon up. See, God had a big end game for Gideon. He had to grow Gideon into the understanding of who he was before Gideon would say yes to doing that big, big, scary task at the end of it. And so God started this process, this pattern in Gideon's life, the very same pattern he'll work in your life if you let him. And it just goes like this: grow and go, grow and go, grow and go. He'll meet you right where you are. And he'll grow you up just a little bit there. He'll say, now go to the next level. He meet you at that level, grow you up a little bit more, send you to the next level. Grow and go, grow and go, grow and go. So the cool thing about that is when you get to like level 7, 8, or 9, wherever you are in your faith journey, you look back at level 1 and 2, and those things that used to be so big and so scary and so hard for you are like piece of cake. I can do that now anytime I need to. So God was growing Gideon up so that Gideon would be ready for this huge, big ask that God was giving him. He grew Gideon until Gideon was able to say, okay, God, I'm all in and I'm all yours. Let's go beat up the Midianites. And Gideon is now ready to serve. And today, we're going to learn from Gideon 3 biblical principles of serving. So what I'm going to ask you to do right now is take out your sermon note sheet. Remember, I can see you. If you're not moving, I'm taking names. Get your sermon note sheet out. Grab a pen from the chair around you. This is your first fill-in this morning. And here's why we do this. This has got to be practical. When you come in here and you give up, an hour or two of your time on a Sunday morning, you could be doing 1,000 other things. If you can't take it home with you, then don't come, right? We've failed you. if we can't make this practical, real, and relevant for you, then we've not done our job, and we're wasting your time and God's time. So hopefully this is a way that you take it home with you and it really begins to become part of your lifestyle. So here's number one. Every believer is expected to serve. Every believer is expected to serve. In my home growing up, when I was a kid, I had a chore list every single morning. How many of y'all had chore lists when you were kids? How many of you still have chore lists now that you're adults? Right? Doesn't change, right? Just different source, same chores. When I was a kid, I would come down from my bedroom every day in the summer, and there on the kitchen table was my list for the day, the things my mom wanted me to accomplish that day. And they ranged everything from like sweep out the garage to pick up apples, which, by the way, was no easy chore. We had 11 apple trees in our yard. And those apple trees, man, they were prolific. They dropped apples all summer long. And these are apples that got run over by the mower, that just rotted in place. It attracted all these yellow jackets all over the place. So one of my jobs every few days was go pick up apples. And you remember when we used to get paper bags from the grocery store? I would fill 2 or 3 of those in a morning. It was not fun. But I'd be picking up apples. But invariably, whatever my list of chores was, always, every day in the summer, one of my constant chores was weed a row of the garden. Hated it. That's one of the worst things in my life, weeding the garden. I'm not talking about rinky-dink garden. I'm telling you, my mama was a farm girl, raised in the country on a farm. We had 3 acres of land just at my house. When she had a garden, she had a garden. And so one day I walked down, I'm like 8 or 9 years old, and I read through my list, I do everything, and the bottom thing was, weed a row of corn in the garden. Dang. Okay, I made up my mind. It's going to be the most beautifully weeded row of corn in the world. So I walked up through the backyard, up to the back section of our yard where our garden was, and I looked down the rows of corn. I picked one, said it's about a half mile long to a 9-year-old. And it was hot. Oh, it was hot. And the dirt, it just hurt my knees. Y'all pitying me yet? No? Okay. So it was like a half mile long. And I said, I'm going to make this the most beautifully weeded row of corn my mom has ever seen. And I got on my knees. I started crawling through the corn. I picked out every blade of grass, every green sprout, every growing thing that was not corn. And I went up one side, and I turned around. I got on my knees again. I came down the other side, and I cleaned it out. I got done. I stood up. I looked at that row of corn. I thought, woo. Both sides look really, really good. All the weeds are just laying there on the dirt with the roots up, just drying out, dying in the sun. I was proud of that row of corn. And I said, Mama, you need to come up and see this row of corn. You're going to be amazed. So my mom came up in the garden, and she looks at it. She says, ooh, Richie. Don't you ever call me that, by the way. Ooh, Richie, that looks really good. You pulled out every single weed and pumpkin plant. Who knew? I didn't know you plant pumpkins. Did you know that you plant pumpkins around the corn and it's good for it? I did, but my mama was a farm girl. We didn't have any pumpkins that year. But here's the reality. At my house, we did chores. You know why we did chores? Because we were family. And we had responsibilities to each other and with each other. We served as family because it wasn't fair for like only 1 or 2 people to do all the work in our family. Hey, church family. Hey, church family, we got work to do. Look at us. Listen, when y'all come in, you got to start squeezing together. We're running out of seats again. We got work to do. This is a family of God, and God expects every one of us, if we're believers, to be serving. Here's a true statement that will connect to this. A true statement. Jesus' lordship of your life means Jesus' leadership of your life. You cannot claim him as Lord and not allow him to lead you. Here's how Jesus led. Here's how Paul wrote it. He put it like this. He said, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be grasped, something to be held on to and kept. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a what? Y'all have dental work today? What? By taking the very nature of a what? A servant. See, Jesus came and he modeled for us what it meant to be a servant. But maybe that was just Jesus doing his thing. Maybe he never asked us to do that. Well, au contraire, mon frère, let me just tell you about this. At the end of his earthly life, Jesus was gathered in an upper room of a house for the very last supper he would have with them. And during that time with them, and some of you know this, he took off his outer garment, laid it to the side, took up the towel apron actually of a servant, the lowest servant in their culture, put it around his waist, tied it on, grabbed the basin of water, and went to the feet of every one of his disciples. The same feet that would betray him, the same feet that would deny him, the very same feet that fled out of the garden, leaving him alone with the soldiers that very night. He washed their feet, all their feet. And when he was done, he stood back up, and this is what he said to them. Listen, this is for all of us. He said, now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example. He wasn't saying, hey, go out to Walmart today and start washing people's feet. That would freak people out. He's saying you serve. I have served you as my followers. Now you go out and serve. Every believer is expected to serve. Here's how it played out in Gideon's life. When God approached Gideon, God didn't ask Gideon if he wanted to serve. God didn't go up and say, hey, you want to be a warrior? God approached Gideon and said, hey, you are a mighty warrior, and here's what you're going to do. God absolutely expected Gideon to serve. He expects the same of you and of me. Listen, God does not come to you, invite you, equip you, empower you, call you, and then ask you if you want to serve. He equips you, calls you, and empowers you, and expects you to serve. The moment you say yes to Jesus, you need to understand you're signing on the dotted line and say, I am willing to serve wherever, whomever, however you tell me to, God. When the call comes, you don't get to say no. That's the first principle of serving. Every believer is expected to serve. Let's go get this next one. We're going to pick up right now in Scripture where we left off last week. Remember, Gideon, last week we stopped where Gideon had gathered his army. Gideon's got 32,000 men as soldiers gathered around him. He's got 32,000. I want you to think about that, what that looked like. They're in his army, and they are camped just south of where the enemy was camped. And here's what happened. This is Judges 7. If you got your Bibles, open up. If you've got your phone or device, open up your Bible app and go to Judges chapter 7, beginning with verse 2. The Lord said to Gideon, and he's got his 32,000. The Lord said to Gideon, you have too many men. I cannot deliver Midian into their hands, or Israel will boast against me, saying, my own strength has saved me. Like, they're going to take credit for it. They're going to say, look what we did. Look how great we are. So here was God's plan, still speaking to Gideon. Now, verse 3. Now announce to the army, anyone who trembles with fear may turn back and leave Mount Gilead. Get this. So 22,000 left, while 10,000 remained. I wonder how that conversation went. You ever think about that? I wonder how that conversation between Gideon and his 32,000 men went. I mean, come on, Gideon's done the whole Braveheart thing, right? He's roused his men, he's raised the flag, he's rallied their spirits, he's got them ready to go. I bet it took some convincing to get them there. These are not soldiers ready to fight. These are men who for 7 years have been cowards hiding in caves. These are guys who've put their own safety even above their family safety, saying, hey, let's just hide here and let them take everything. We'll find a way to provide for you later. These are men who were cowardly and hiding away. They weren't jumping and biting at the bit to go out and fight the Midianites. It took some convincing to get them there. I can't imagine how Gideon must have been so proud. I can just picture him like the movie in Braveheart, the scene in Braveheart where he runs by them slapping his sword on all theirs. Way to go, so glad y'all are here. And then God says, hey, I got this really great idea. Let's just reduce your number by 2/3. I wonder how that conversation went. See, he's got them all gathered. They're ready to fight, ready to die. And Gideon has to go to them and say, hey, by the way, change of plans. God says that any of you who are trembling with fear can pack up and go home. I wonder if any of the guys were like this. Come on, just tremble. 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 God, I'm trembling. Hey, I'm trembling. I can go home. Hey, Gideon, look, I'm trembling. Do you see that? Mark it down. I'm trembling. I get to go home. 22,000 of them trembled and went home, leaving them how many? 10,000 left. By the way, do you know how many soldiers were in the enemy army? 135,000 troops. Now, in other places in this whole scenario, they keep saying, hey, there are too many to count, too many to count. But for some reason, in this section, God counted them for us. God gave us a number. I think that's significant. He numbers them. He said, there were 135,000. They're big, they're bad, they're ugly. They stink worse than a middle school boy's cabin at retreat. And Gideon's army can look down in the valley just to the north of them and see all these soldiers, 135,000 of them. Why would God give such a crazy decree? Why would God say, you got too many? Because he knows us, right? He knew them. Well, right now, when Gideon had like 32,000, they have 135,000. I'm not a mathematician, but it's pretty simple. It's like a 4-to-1 ratio. 4 enemies to every one of Gideon's men. And I can, they're not going to win that war, but God's going to win it for them. And I can see them after God wins a war for them looking around saying, you know what? We're pretty good. They outnumbered us 4-to-1, and we just took a man. Woo! We are that good. I could see them doing that. God knew they would do that. So God says, I got to pare you down. He takes 2/3 of their men away. When he takes them away, they're down to how many do they have now? 10,000? We can do that math pretty easy. It used to be, 4-to-1. Now it's 13-to-1, roughly. That's better. But listen, God isn't done yet. Listen to verse 4. But the Lord said to Gideon, there are still too many men. Take them down to the water, and I will thin them out for you there. If I say, this one shall go with you, he shall go. But if I say, this one shall not go with you, he shall not go. And here's what that looked like. Gideon took all those men, 10,000, down to this river to drink. And God said, they're going to drink 2 different ways, and you divide them this way. The people that lap like a dog, the ones that scoop the water up and drink it out of their hands, you put them over there. But the people that bend down on their knees and drink with their lips right to the river's edge, you put them over there. 9,700 of them drank on their knees with their lips, and they got over here. 300 of them drank like a dog. 300. And here's what God said to Gideon. The Lord said to Gideon, with the 300 men that lapped like a dog, I will save you and give the Midianites into your hands. So you 9,700, you go the 22,000 and go home. So Gideon's gathered this huge army, 32,000 men, and God takes it down to 300 men. At first, they're outnumbered 4-to-1. After the first break, they were outnumbered 13-to-1. But you know what it is now? 420-to-1. There's no way now they can take credit for what God is about to do. And friends, this is the second, and I believe this is the most foundational principle of serving that we must learn. This is so important. Here's number 2. When you serve, it will always be God's will, God's way, for God's glory. Never mistake that. It will always be God's will, God's way, for God's glory. I'm sure Gideon, if God had asked him to script this, would have scripted it way differently than whittling down to 300. I think he would have said, hey, God, I got 32,000. You bring another 150,000 in for me, we'll go attack. That would have been my game plan, right? But it's not my will, my way, for my glory. It's God's will, God's way, for God's glory. Friends, it must be every single time. That is the second principle of serving. And here's a third principle of serving. Number 3, God is always faithful. I'm not going to get into the details today. That comes up in another week of the battle. It's amazing what God did. But let me just tell you, like, spoiler alert, with 300 men, Gideon defeated the Midianites. With 300 cowardly men, Gideon defeated the Midianites. He conquered them. God did exactly what God said he would do. God is always faithful. When Gideon said he would serve, when Gideon let it be God's will, God's way for God's glory, he watched God take ground that day. And friends, we will watch God do the same thing this day. We have a huge battle in front of us. We've gotten the call. God said, win your world, win your family, win your friends, win your workplace, win your school, win your community. We look at that and they're camped out all around us and they're way more. They way outnumber us. We can't take credit for it. But when we do it, we do God's will, God's way for God's glory. I guarantee you God will be faithful in this. He will win the battles. We will see lives coming to Jesus, reclaiming ground, taking ground, lives saved in Jesus' name. Amen. 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 Thank you. Baptists, raise up. So let me give you an example, a real life example, which happened last weekend. So we're going down to the park, right? Church in the park. We didn't know how many people to expect. A couple hundred people, 100, 200, that'd be a big win from everything that they've ever had there before. And we're about to leave. Kim Rue, who opened up the service, we're here. We're kind of shutting down after traditional service. We're racing to get down there, and we get a text from the park. Our team is down at like 7 o'clock in the morning, setting things up, getting ready to go. Hey, they told us we'd have 700 chairs, and we got 25. They said 200 chairs. We have 25. So, whoa. All those people we just invited, we gave out 2,000 cards. We canvassed, the whole fall festival the night before. What if 100, 200 people come and there's not enough chairs for that? We don't want them to stand. So, God, will you be faithful in this? And God said, yeah, watch me. How many cars do you have? 2. Mine and Kim's. How many people do you have? 2. He said, no, you don't. You have a confirmation class upstairs in a room right now. We went up to confirmation class. Hey, kids, we need to interrupt y'all. They're having a blast in there, by the way. We need to interrupt you. We need you to step up and step into serving right now. Serve God for God's glory right now. You know what those kids did? They jumped out of their chairs. What do you need us to do? And we said, we got to find folding chairs all over the church. They went and they found chairs and they filed out. They brought 50, 60 chairs out and loaded them in our cars, and they were happy to give it up for our confirmation class. Woo! So still, like we're maybe 100, 200 people. We got 50, 60 chairs we could fit in between our 2 vehicles. And I think, Mike, you said this. It's like bread and fish, God just multiplied. We sat 350 people with 60 chairs. People brought their own. We knew we were kind of supposed to do that, but all the guests that came, I don't know how they knew to bring a chair, but they did. They sat in bleachers. It was just amazing. Anyway, that is a great example. God is always faithful. When we let him be him and do what he tells us to do for his glory, he will always be faithful. We're going to watch him win our world, taking ground. So friends, here's my challenge for you. I'm going to invite you. In fact, right now I'm inviting you, I'm challenging you to begin praying about how you are going to serve him. I'm giving you the call. I'm giving you the ask. We need you to step up in service. We need every believer to be serving. Now, how you do that, whatever God has gifted you as, your talents, whatever kind of excites your spirit about serving, man, do that. We can help you connect with that. We've already had people connect with our leaders even last night saying, hey, I think Pastor Rich was talking to me. I got to get serving. So they're stepping into servanthood already. But we can help connect you into ways to serve. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you'll be called into leadership here at Community Church. Maybe you'll be called to lead a small group or be in a team. Maybe you'll be setting up chairs and tearing down chairs, which we're all going to do afterwards today. Maybe you're going to be part of a prayer group. I don't know. Maybe you'll be going on the middle school retreat and clean up dirty socks, underwear. I don't know what it is. But I do know this. Every follower of Jesus, every believer is expected to serve. And when we serve, it's always God's will, God's way for God's glory. And when we do that, God is always faithful. We're going to see him claim and take ground. So friends, what we're going to do is give you a chance to pray about this, maybe even respond to this today. The worship team is going to bring a song out over us. And you just remain seated. Our offering's going to be taken at the same time. They're going to bring the baskets around. And here's the deal. If you are a member or just part of the family of this church, this is what we do, right? This is what God commanded us to tithe. And so we do this every week. We're not ashamed to take up an offering. This is what we're supposed to be doing. If you're a guest with us, keep your wallet in your pocket. A better way to put something in would be to fill out the Connect card in the back of your bulletin, tear it off, drop it in there. So that's happening during this time. This is a response time. That's part of serving. But also, if you need to come to the altar, come on. God, I've been sitting in a chair for so long, 3 years, 5 years, 50 years, and I'm not serving. God, what do you want me to do? Just come and ask God. He's not shy. He'll talk to you about it. Just start the conversation with him. If you want someone to pray with you, we'll be here to pray with you. Just let us know. But let's use this time let God speak into our lives. Let me pray us in. God, thank you for this great opportunity just to have some conversation with you, Jesus. We've been talking corporately about these things, but now it's time to get one-on-one with you. So, Jesus, would you let us encounter you, to engage with you? God, would you let us hear from you? I pray that people today, that we would have hearts just saying, God, I'm willing to be made willing to do whatever you want me to do to serve, because this is the mark of a person that follows you. So God, have your way in this. We commit this to you, Jesus, in your holy name. Amen.